Hi everybody, it's Nikki here and welcome to my Bookie Nook. So today my video is my N.E.W.T.s wrap up. This was a month-long readathon done by Book Roast. I will link her details for you down below so you can check her out. Please do. She's amazing. I love watching her videos. So I did do a TBR at the beginning of the month, and so now let's do the wrap up. So let's start off with astronomy. For astronomy, to get an acceptable, I had to read a book with a moon on the cover, and the only book that I had with a moon, but it was on the spine, was Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I really wanted to read this because Erin Morgenstern has another book coming out later this year called The Starless Sea, and it's a really pretty book, and I was really tempted by it, but having never read Erin Morgenstern's books before, I didn't know if I would like her writing style or her storytelling. So I really wanted to read this book so I could get a feel of how she writes and if I would like it or not. I like it. The Night Circus is basically about this circus that arrives. Nobody knows when or where it's going to arrive. It just arrives in different places. And it tells the story of a few different characters. We have characters within the circus itself, characters outside of the circus who are coming as visitors. And then throughout the whole story, we know there's a game. And a game is being played, and we know the people playing it. We know the people who've started the game, but what those rules to the game are and why they're playing the game and what the prize for the game is, we do not know. We do not know how they win the game either. The magical writing in here is just so whimsical and so mesmerizing that even though by the time I got to the end of this book, I still was pretty confused about what this game was and why they were playing it and how they played it. And even though I felt so confused and so dazed, it was so worth it. Like, I didn't feel like I just wasted my time on a book that I didn't understand. I felt like it wasn't so much the destination of this book, but the journey of this book. If you're looking for a story that's going to give you a final, like, conclusion, a nice cleared up conclusion, this book is probably not something that you're going to enjoy. But if you just like the whimsical journey that people go on and the magic of it, then this is a real circus kind of experience. It's magical and surreal and confusing and leaves you just dazed. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. Will I be buying The Starless Sea? Probably, yes. For Exceeds Expectation in astronomy, I had to read a book with the word night in the title. And for that, I read Evernight by Claudia Gray. This is a very cheesy, paranormal romance story. Basically, when was this written? 2008. So this is basically a boy meets girl or girl meets boy. Parents don't want them to be together, but they really want to be together. Oh, and by the way, one of them is a vampire. So this is cheesy and tropey, and I loved it. I loved it. This Evernight is about a girl who is at a private school out somewhere in the middle of nowhere in the countryside, and you think it's a normal school, but it actually turns out it's a school for vampires. A school where vampires can go and not have to worry about trying to meld in with humans. It's really interesting. It kind of flips the whole Twilight thing on its head. And I really like that twist. And yeah, I love the romance in here. It's cheesy, but I love a bit of cheese. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. I do have the second book, Stargazer, and when I finished this, I actually had a look on World of Books and I got book 3 and book 4 of this series as well. So yes, there is a fifth book, but that follows a different character who is in this one. But I presume from what happened in this one that we might not see much of that character anymore. And that fifth book is Balthazar, called Balthazar, and it's after one of the characters in here. So, okay, to get an outstanding, I had to read a sci-fi, I believe. And for that, I read Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. This was a library book, so I no longer have it. So Ready Player One is all about a boy who lives sometime in the future. So it's a futuristic sort of setting, but like normal world, like human Earth, like. And general living has become so monotonous and slum and miserable that the majority of people now live in a virtual reality world. And this virtual reality world is called the Oasis. It was created by somebody and that person has now died. So what they have done is they've set up a competition for players to find keys, and then whoever gets all 3 keys and is the first to finish, they then win the ownership of the Oasis. So there is a boy, and I forget his name now, and he is absolutely infatuated with the creator of the Oasis. He's the creator was very much 80s inspired, so 80s TV programs, 80s movies, 80s music, 80s play, like video games, and so a lot of the references in Ready Player One were all 80s. And yeah, this boy goes on this quest to complete all 3 keys. And he's up against a corporation who really want to take over the Oasis and make it more of a financial profit organization, whereas at the moment the Oasis is free to anybody who wants to play. Very difficult for me to remember the synopsis without the book on hand. Yeah, I enjoyed the film probably more than the book because the film was able to create better quests for them to do in order to get the keys, whereas the quests that were in the book were kind of slow and there was an awful lot of description and like real like information dumping. Like if you don't know about the 80s movies and games and things like that, you will, by the end of Ready Player One, you will know them because it dumps so much information on you. And the writing in the book was also very small, and it needed to be because there was so much information in there. In fact, it got to the point where every time it started to info dump on me, I would start to skim read, which means I would read it real quick and just sort of look over the top of it. Yeah, unfortunately, Ready Player One, the book, got a 2-star from me, but as I say, me and my husband did watch the film, and I'd say that was probably a good 3.5 star. So yeah, I preferred the film. Sorry. Okay, so on to Divination. For an acceptable, I had to read a white book. And for that, I was buddy reading The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater. So this is the final book in the Raven Boys cycle. I am going to do a full sort of in-depth review on this series in a different video later on my channel. So keep your eyes peeled out for that if you want to hear my thoughts on the whole series. But in regards, I don't want to give too much spoiler information about this because I want to leave that for the video. But for non-spoiler review on this book, I gave this a 2 stars. I did originally give it 3, but then when I was talking to Charlotte, who I was buddy reading it with, the more and more I realised I didn't enjoy this book. So, for Exceeds Expectation for Divination, I had to read a short story collection. Now, originally, I had used the forbidden book that we were allowed to use to replace any of the prompts in our N.E.W.Ts, which was Spellslinger by Sebastian de Castell. However, when it came down to it, I was really in the need for a short story, so I picked one up. And you're going to laugh at me, because it's this one. It is Bad Mermaids Meet the Witches by Sabine Pounder. And it's one of those World Book Day books, so it was extremely short. I believe Goodreads has it down as 72 pages. It does have a couple of excerpts from or sample chapters from other books in the back as well. Bad Mermaids, it is a middle grade, and Bad Mermaids, this is basically a story about how once every 100 years mermaids and witches get together for a party. However, on this occasion, another witch manages to make their way down, because only the queen normally comes down. The queen witch normally, or the head witch, normally goes down to the mermaids ocean. But on this occasion, another witch manages to get sucked down into the mermaids world. And so some mermaids there, Beatty, Mimi and Zelda mermaids, they try and help a witch called Tiga, to win a competition so she can get a prize that is going to help her get back to the surface. It's a cute little children's story that my little girls would have loved me reading to them for bedtime. As a grown woman, 39 years old, it was a little bit too young for me, but still very whimsical, very funny and very cutesy, and yeah, quick read. So I read that one. For Outstanding for Divination, I had to read the last book I bought or borrowed, and for that I chose a library book. It was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling. Now, I have been borrowing the Harry Potter series books from my library because the only one I own is the last one, which is the Deathly Hallows, and it's a first edition hardback cover. I don't know why I own that one and only that one. I never even was in the craze. And I've been listening to them also on audiobook read by Stephen Fry. Another unpopular opinion. I'm not a massive fan of the Harry Potter books. I am reading Harry Potter for the first time as an adult. Now, granted, originally it started as a middle grade book and then it kind of went into YA as you got later and later into the series. Now, Goblet of Fire is my favourite film out of all of the Harry Potter films, so I was quite looking forward to reading Goblet of Fire, the book, and I wasn't impressed. I wasn't blown away by it. Again, very similar to Ready Player One, it just seemed like there was an awful lot of information there that I didn't feel was actually necessary. And just like, I tell you what it was. I tell you what is really, really grating on me with Harry Potter at the moment. I'm really not liking the relationship that Ron and Harry have with Hermione. Ron and Hermione are kind of like about the ball, the going to the ball, and after they've exhausted all other options, finally Ron asks Hermione, and Hermione's like, I've already got someone to go with. And they're like, no, you haven't. And she's like, yes, I have. If you haven't noticed, I'm a girl. People talk to me. And they're like, no, they don't. And they put her down. They bully her. Now, I might get hate for saying that because God knows you pick on Harry Potter and the books because there's a massive fan base for them. But as an adult looking and reading this, I felt awfully uncomfortable. Like, really uncomfortable reading or listening to um, Ron and Hermione Ron and Harry, sorry, treating Hermione like she was nothing, like she was nobody, like she wasn't even a girl to them. She was just an annoying person who hung on. And I know that the friendship, they're just kids, but I felt like Harry snaps at people all the time. I just, I know it's an unpopular opinion. I actually gave Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire just 3 stars. I liked it once it got talking about the trials that they had to do. Um, but yeah, it made me uncomfortable with their friendship because it felt more like bullying to me. So that was Divination completed. So technically at that point I had completed all of my N.E.W.Ts that I needed to become a neurologist. But as I say, being an overachiever, I then went on to complete History of Magic. So for accepted, I had to read a fantasy, and originally I had the 4th book in the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare, which was the City of Fallen Angels. However, I was running out of time by the point that I got to that book. But earlier in the month, I'd really had the urge to pick up a library book that I have had out for over a month, The Iron Trial by Holly Black and Cassandra Clare. So it's like this. This is kind of taking the Harry Potter story where a kid goes to a magic school and there is the chosen one trope, and the big evil that was threatening the world years and years before, and then a big thing happened, a big event happened, and suddenly the evil has disappeared, not to be seen since, but there's always an inkling that he's still around. Very, very similar to Harry Potter. But I really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed this book so much that I've actually said to my husband, they have the box set of these books on Amazon. Please may I have them for Christmas? Because I want to know what happens. Because I say it's a lot like Harry Potter, but this one completely flips the chosen one trope completely on its head. Like, I'm not going to spoil it because I don't want to spoil it for you. If you want to read this, if this sounds like something you might enjoy, I want you to have that moment of, oh my God, that I had with this book. I loved it. Um, so basically there is a boy, I forget what his name is, Callum, but he goes by Cal, and he's been told all his life by his dad that to get into the magisterium is a bad thing. He doesn't want to go to the magisterium, which is the magic school, because magic is bad. Magic is evil. He doesn't want anything to do with magic. He won't teach his son magic or nothing. Callum's dad hates magic. His Callum's mum died when he was a baby, and during this big war that happened when the big evil suddenly disappeared. And so Callum's dad blames this magical war for the reason why his wife is dead, and Callum's mother. And so when Callum goes to the trials to do the test to get into the school, his dad tells him, you must fail the test and you won't get into the school and we can move on with our lives. So Callum does try to fail the test. The only problem is he still manages to get in. So he gets into the school, and so then him and the other students are then trained in magic, and things happen and occur. And yes, the twist in here was phenomenal. I was like, I was ready for the chosen one trope, and then it completely got flipped on its head, and I was like, what are you doing? And I loved it. I love it when a book does that to me. I'm expecting one thing and it flips it completely on its head. And I was excited. I was so excited. And I was like, Harry Potter? Harry Potter who? I want this. I want the Magisterium. I do. Because it was amazing. I loved it. I think I gave it 5 stars. So for next year, I'm going to annoy so many people with my opinions on the Raven Boys cycle and on Harry Potter. But you know what? My reading, my choice. I'm allowed to have an opinion. So for Exceeds Expectation, I had to read a book with a map. And for this, I actually read another library book. And that is Seven Blades in Black by Sam Sykes. And this one does have a map. A very simple map, but it has a map. This book confused me. Nothing to do with the story. Nothing to do with the story at all. I got this book from my library. I got about a quarter of the way through this book and I thought, I love this book. I want to own it, which I've only done a couple of times after reading a library book. So I went onto Amazon. This book isn't out until November. So I went on to Waterstones. Maybe Waterstones are selling it. No, this book is not released until November. You can pre-order it, but you can't buy it yet. But I have it in my hands from the library. So I don't know how my library got an early copy, but they did. And I am certainly glad they did, because I freaking loved this book. The banter, the witty banter of the characters in this book. The storyline is this. You have Sal the Cacophony. I think I'm saying that right. She is a vagrant, which is basically a mage gone outlaw. So, outlaw mage. So, yeah. And there are 2 sides to a war. There's the Imperium, who are all the mages, and then you have the Revolution, who are all the non-magic humans, and they're fighting in a war. And you have the Vagrants, who are the mages who have left the Imperium and are fighting for their own good, like for their own needs and wants. And there was a massive event where a group of about 32 mages all turned on the Imperium, and they've now gone vagrant as well. And Sal the Cacophony is trying to seek out those 32 mages who have gone vagrant, and she's seeking revenge on them. At the beginning of the book, you see that she is caught. She's caught by the Revolution and she's being held and interrogated before she is put to death by firing squad. And she begins to tell this story of what she's been up to in the lead up to her capture. And it's just, you realise that she's an unlikable hero, basically. Like, you're not meant to like her because of what she's doing, but she is doing some good. And yeah, you can bet your butt that when this does come out in November, which is also my birthday month, so woohoo, birthday present, I'm going to be buying it, because then I'm going to buy the sequel because I want to know what happens next. Um, I loved it. I loved it. So I did give this one a 4 out of 5 stars. But yeah, so absolutely love that. So glad I got that. And then finally, my O for outstanding for History of Magic was to reread a favourite or a classic. And for this one, I finally read Spellslinger by Sebastian de Castell because I wanted to get it in. Because it is the group book. Everybody's going to be reading it and talking about it in the live show. So I wanted to read it. And this copy is from Waterstones and it's got the coloured edges. So each book in the series has a different colour, and then their sides are printed in a different colour as well. So this story features Kellen, who is just shy of his 16th birthday when he has to complete trials to prove his magic, to get his mage's name. So a lot of mages going on in these books. The only problem is Kellen doesn't have any magic. So yes, throughout the book you find out why he doesn't have any magic, and we also come across some of my favourite characters. We have the squirrel cat that is here, who is called Rikis, or that's how I've been pronouncing it. Other people might pronounce it differently. And then we have here Ferius. Ferius? Yeah, Ferius. And she is this kind of character that just shows up and saves Kellen at the very beginning of the book, and then she is kind of helping Kellen throughout his journey through the book, as he tries to deal with the fact that he has no magic for these mage trials. I loved this book as well. I really did. I gave this one a 5 stars. And as soon as I finished this book yesterday, I was in town buying another 2 books in this series. So now I've got books 1 to 4 in this series. And I believe there is a 5th one, and there's a 6th one coming out in October. So I will be buying those as well. I loved it. I loved the story. I loved the writing. I loved the humour. I love this. I can't wait to see where this story is going to go next. I can understand why people love this book. Yeah, I'm interested to know what other people thought about it who are doing the N.E.W.Ts and reading this book. So I will be hopefully watching the live show when it goes up. So yeah, I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. So that was it. That was all 9 books that I read for the N.E.W.Ts. So here they all are, obviously missing the few that were library books and had to be returned. So these are all the books that I read. I am really happy with most of what I read. I had a couple of 2 stars that were books that I was quite excited to read, but then realised there was too much info dumpy and not quite what I was hoping for. And then I had some others that were really surprising and that I loved. A couple of new favourites in there, so I was really pleased with this. I will definitely, hopefully, if I'm still reading and doing this sort of thing this time next year, I will definitely take part in the Owls and the N.E.W.Ts again. So thank you very much to Book Roast for creating this amazing readathon, because there's so much detail goes into it. It really is a pleasure to take part. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.